Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today I'm going to give you 5 reasons why the 80s was the best decade for science fiction movies. And my 5 reasons are basically 5 movies. I'm going to go down my list of 5 favorite sci-fi movies from the 80s, and they're all movies that I still watch on a regular basis today. At least once a year, I'd say. So buckle up and get ready to blast off. Number 5 is Aliens. And this movie, it's rare when you have a sequel, the second movie in a series of movies actually surpass the original. Okay, the Aliens was just superior to the original movie. And it was different. It went from being Alien was a sci-fi horror movie. It was basically a horror movie. But then Aliens was more of an action movie. They didn't try to be scary in any way. It was just really action. I mean, it was kind of tense, thriller kind of, but more of an action movie, more along the lines of Rambo or something like that than Freddy Krueger. And a lot of our 80s movies, they just had iconic lines, right? The dialogue just popped, I guess you would say. One of my favorite actors, Bill Paxton, and he played many parts like this. He just stood out in a lot of his roles, right? Weird Science was one of them. But in Aliens, he just has some iconic lines. Put her in charge. Game over, man. Game over. I was getting short. 2 weeks left or whatever. He says how long he had left in the Marines. About to end his service in the Marines and join civilian life, and he's about to die. He was so upset over that. So yeah, that's just a classic movie. I loved it. I still love it today. But when it first came out and the first time I saw it, I loved that movie. It was just so amazing. And number 4 is Back to the Future. That another great movie. When it first came out, that thing was like a cultural phenomena for us, as teenagers. And I just bought the DVD box set. And I've been watching them. Still, they hold the test of time, in my view anyway. They're just great movies. But the first Back to the Future was just so different than anything else I'd ever seen at the time. It was amazing. The special effects were amazing. And although not crisp, sharp CGI like we have today, but the special effects hold the test of time. I mean, it's still a pretty good looking movie. And all of these on this list are, right? So yeah, Back to the Future, Marty going back and the whole, I know they take some liberties with the time travel, the science of it and stuff, but it's still awesome when you're 15 or whatever and you're watching that. It's just, really mind-blowing. It makes you think. That's the kind of movie that makes you think about time travel and physics and science and stuff. It just makes you think. So yeah, that's definitely in my top 5. And number 3 is RoboCop. You just can't, I can't say enough about the original RoboCop. That, again, it's one of those movies that came out and just kind of blew my mind, just the thought of a cyborg like that. And the wet works and the computer integrating with a person. And now that is, becoming a reality, it's just a little weirder than they showed it in the movie. It's just, they're like trying to make it mainstream instead of like a company trying to make a cop or whatever. They want to put it in everybody. So that's a little different. But yeah, my favorite scene in that movie is when they tell the guy in the boardroom to pick up the gun and point it at that big robot, and the robot tells him he's got 5 seconds to comply or whatever, so he puts the gun down, and then the robot smokes his ass anyway. I love that scene. Yeah, that's awesome. But that whole movie's great. Another movie that just blew my mind. I loved it when I was a kid. I loved it. I probably watched it a dozen times when we rented it on VCR or whatever. I probably wore that tape out, playing it over and over all weekend. And number 2 is The Terminator. And you just can't say enough about The Terminator. That Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie, he had like a 1.5 lines of dialogue, but it just like that Terminator and Conan the Barbarian, those two were just such iconic roles for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I remember the first time I watched that movie, and he pulls up in that, I think it was a station wagon, and you see the tire crunch that little that toy car. It was a Tonka truck or something, and the tire just crushes it, rolls up on it. That was just an awesome scene, because it illustrated, the machine, how this machine, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was kind of destroying humanity, right? And there were a lot of good lines in that too. I think that's where Arnold Schwarzenegger come up with his tagline, "I'll be back," and the line that Michael Biehn says about, they sweat, bad breath, and everything. You can't tell the difference between them and people. It was just such a great movie. And it's one that I'll watch pretty often today. It stands the test of time. They used some special effects, like when Arnold, plops his eyeball out while looking in the mirror. That's why he puts those sunglasses on. And that looked a little cheesy, that one scene there. But other than that, I mean, the special effects were pretty damn good, and they hold the test of time. So, yeah, I think The Terminator deserves a very high spot on just about everyone's list, unless you just don't like Arnold Schwarzenegger for some reason, maybe. But, yeah, The Terminator is definitely number 2. And number 1 for me is Blade Runner. Blade Runner, just one of my favorite movies, period, of all time. That was another, just, it was mind-blowing. It was awesome. The first time I saw that shit, it was, you get into certain movies and they're just really, you just get into them. You get into the story and the world, and they just drag you into them. And Blade Runner was actually a box office flop at the time, but it's become a cult hit. But just the dark noir kind of element about it, and everything about it was just so awesome. The deeper messages and themes throughout it about life, the meaning of life, death, and all that stuff. It was just really thought-provoking movie, on top of just being great, written superbly, and everything about it. I really can't find many flaws in Blade Runner. And of all of the sci-fi movies that came out in the 80s, Blade Runner is my favorite. And I did not get to go see it in the theater, but I've watched it many, many times on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, all that stuff, So yeah, I've seen it a lot of times, and it never gets old. I still love that movie. I've probably watched it once or twice this year already. So yeah. And then the new Blade Runner 2049, it was good. I'll give them that. It was okay. It just didn't have the same effect on me that the original one did, but it wasn't a bad movie. So I'm glad I watched the second one, and they're supposed to be coming out with a TV show here pretty quick, and I hope they do that well. And for honorable mentions, we gotta talk about Empire Strikes Back, Spaceballs, The Wrath of Khan, E.T., and The Thing. Now, The Thing didn't really hold up well as far as special effects, right? It was scary. It's still a creepy ass movie when I watch it today, but the special effects don't really hold up as much in that one. Still a great movie though. I'll rewatch it over and over again. But yeah, it just didn't hold up. It didn't make my top 5 as far as, just beloved movies, but still great movie. And it's one that I still watch once in a while, even today. And E.T., that was just more of I don't even think of that as a sci-fi movie, really. Honestly, I don't. When I think of E.T., I think of like a family Disney kind of thing, not sci-fi like Blade Runner or Terminator. So I don't know. It is sci-fi technically because some the alien from outer space, but other than that, that's the only thing. If you changed E.T. to someone from another country or something, the story would not change. The story would still work if you just changed E.T. from an alien to something else, a pet or another person or something. So I just don't really consider it sci-fi, but still a good movie. It's just not one that I watch today. I watched it a couple times as a kid maybe, but I just never was a real big E.T. guy. And I still, if I see it, I might watch it for nostalgia reasons, but it's not like They Live and They Live probably needs to be on this list too. But yeah, it's just not one that I rewatch today. Wrath of Khan, that was probably the most famous and the best Star Trek movie. It was superb, but it just couldn't make my list. I like Star Trek well enough. I've seen the movies and stuff. I like them just because I like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like that kind of stuff. So, but I'm not a Trekkie, I guess, what you call them. I'm not a great big Star Trek fan. I'm a sci-fi fan. But so I haven't, I don't rewatch all the Star Trek movies and stuff, but still, it was a good movie. And that's another movie that outdid its predecessor. It's actually better than the first one. So yeah, you gotta mention Wrath of Khan. And Spaceballs. Spaceballs was an idiot spoof on sci-fi and Star Wars and all that. And it was a great movie. A little bit different themed, with the comedy element in it, but still, it needs to be mentioned in our 80s sci-fi. And then The Empire Strikes Back. You just can't say enough about that. That movie was a cultural phenomenon along the lines, maybe even more so than Back to the Future. But yeah, that was just a great movie. I'm just not a big Star Wars fan. I like it well enough, but I would be more into the Terminator thing. But the after Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the Terminator just kind of went off the rails. The movies sucked worse and worse as they went. So not a big Terminator fan either, except for the first and second one. Even though the second Terminator 2, that John Connor's squeaky ass voice as a teenager, that shit gets on my nerves. I can't watch that movie over and over again because I just can't stand that kid screaming. But still, it's a good movie. And I read in the trivia that his voice was actually breaking. His voice he was going through puberty and it was just bad timing, but they couldn't change it, so they just had to stick with it. But that's actually a thing that other people have noticed, and the directors and stuff noticed during the shooting. So yeah, but that kid's voice gets on my nerves. So those are my top 5 and my 5 or 6 if you count They Live. 6 honorable mentions, and I think that's solid argument for the 80s being the best decade for sci-fi movies. No other decade can compare. I mean, you look at that lineup and you try to pick another lineup to equal that from the 90s or the 2000s or the 2010s, and you can't do it. They're not there. They don't exist. So yeah, the 80s was the best, by far the best decade for sci-fi movies. And I'll leave you there with that. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming a member of Gen X Thinks, I'll leave that link down in the description, or you can head over to the channel page and become a member that way. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can do so by clicking on that super thanks button down there. Or you can head over to Buy Me a Coffee and buy me a cup of coffee. I'll leave that link down in the description as well. Thank you very much to those of you who do that. I sincerely appreciate it. If you're interested in Gen X gear, we got some pretty cool stuff over there at Redbubble. Gen X Thinks and Gen X branded stuff, t-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of cool stuff over there at Redbubble. But I'll leave that link down in the description too for any of you who are interested. If you can't or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing these videos on your social media. That helps out one hell of a lot, so thank you very much to those of you who do that. I really do appreciate it. If you have any ideas for future episodes of Gen X Thinks, please put those down in the comments. Or you can email us, and the email is genxthinks@gmail.com. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.